person wounded today at the Castleton Square Mall, the second shooting that we've seen here in Indianapolis in the last 2 months. Thank you for joining us here on a Friday night. It's 10 o'clock. We're glad the weekend is here, aren't we, ladies?
Yes, very glad.
Yeah.
And I think we should just do the talking tonight.
Yeah, my voice is kind of going, so I've got a little water here, a little lozenge.
We'll let you whisper.
I feel fine. The voice just, you know, every time I get a little bit of a tickle in my throat, the voice goes.
Yep.
So we'll see how it goes.
I'm glad you feel good.
Oh yeah, I feel good. I feel good.
Need a little rest.
That's right.
Well, luckily, yes. And you're going to get a ton of that here in about an hour.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, maybe an hour and a half. Yeah. The other thing we're going to talk about tonight: what impact does social media have on young people? What in terms of their mental health? We'll get into that. I'm talking to a clinical psychologist. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up. And Felicia, we've had some days this week where it's felt like spring. But today felt a little bit more like winter, didn't it?
It's crazy because Angela prepares you, but you're never fully prepared.
No, and it's even more painful when
Right.
it comes after 5 days in a row in the 50s and 60s,
I
which is
know.
what we had.
I tell you, that cold got inside of my coat, and I just couldn't get it out. I was like, let me zip up. Oh, my goodness.
Well, yeah, and it felt colder just because it had been so nice and warm.
Right.
And we have wind chills right now in the teens, so
Oh,
it has
no.
it has felt cold all day, and it is still cold at this hour.
Scott is dramatic.
I know. When it's the boys too, makes it extra dramatic.
These are wind chills.
Wind chills.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
my
cold.
gosh.
Feels like 14 in Indianapolis, feels
Yep.
like 13 in Kokomo, feels like 15 in Muncie, feeling like 19 in Shelbyville and 18 in Columbus. Temperatures are in the 20s, and this is where we're going to start our Saturday. But we do warm up. There's some sunshine on the way for tomorrow, and we go from 20s early on to 40 by lunchtime, mid-40s for highs, and 50s for the end of the weekend. So Sunday, make some outdoor plans. We did some yard work last Sunday.
Serious?
Yeah, we did. We cleaned up the garage. Remember last Sunday we were in the 50s?
Yeah, that's right.
So we did some yard work. We cleaned up the garage, took the Christmas lights down. So if you'd like to start your honey-do list right now for
Sunday may
outside
be the
on
day.
Sunday, Sunday's going to be your day.
I got to check on Mark. I just do. Because anytime this weather gets warm and beautiful, Angela comes out with this entire list of chores and things for him to do. Is he
It's a
okay?
combo list, I
No.
think, right?
Should we let her in on what he does?
Feel free.
Starting probably as soon as the weather turns, he is gone.
Boom.
Saturday
He is-
and Sunday.
he is
so
playing
my
golf.
window for outdoor honey-do list is
really
itty
short.
bitty because once golf season starts, it's see you later.
Oh, okay. So get it in
So
now.
please
Get it
don't
done.
feel bad for him.
Get it done now. That's
No
right.
need to check on him. He's just fine.
All right, let's talk about a couple of the stories that we're going to bring you tonight on 13 News at 11, the Castleton Square Mall shooting. You probably saw the early news and our push alerts today. We've had one person wounded. This was a shooting that took place inside the Castleton Square Mall. The medical team was there to apply a tourniquet. They put the victim in an ambulance, took him to the hospital. We understand he's stable currently, and this was the scene outside Castleton Square Mall late today. We covered this as breaking news this afternoon and talked to police about what happened inside the mall today.
The mall has been very inviting to our officers. They have an extremely inviting staff and security. They're continuously working with our officers as well too. There will be a high police presence throughout the evening as well, throughout the weekend as well.
So police, last check, were talking with a person of interest. They've not released any other information about that. They were out there with the dogs, though, as you see, investigating the scene. Workers and customers were told to shelter in place inside the stores at the mall. And tonight at 11, we're going to get into the details of this shooting that took place today with Logan Gay. And then Rachel Krause is going to take a look at some of the other issues that Castleton Square Mall has seen recently. You remember there was a deadly shooting that took place in the parking lot in January. So this is the second shooting that we've had at Castleton Square Mall in the last 2 months.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone, of course, owners and people who work at the mall are frustrated. Police are frustrated. The community even more so. People just want to get to answers and solutions. I mean, you're supposed to be able to go out. You're supposed to be able to go to the mall.
Of course, yeah.
And how scary it would have been to just be, a customer.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's one of the main entrances. You've got Forever 21, H&M,
Yes.
Express. I mean, all of your leads straight down to Macy's, that you know, that main hallway.
That main
And it's like
corridor.
not knowing. You don't know, is this something worse? Is this a mass shooting? It just obviously shouldn't be happening at all,
Right.
but just the not knowing.
Yeah, right now we know one victim, so we'll continue to update that and have an update for you tonight at 11 o'clock. All right, let's talk about teens' mental health. You know, we covered this story when the CDC came out with this new research suggesting that teen girls are experiencing record high levels of violence, sadness, and suicide risk. So you hear this study and you're thinking, wow, that's heartbreaking to hear that there's so many teen girls dealing with these different emotions. So this afternoon I talked with a clinical psychologist who's had 25 years of experience with young people, and I wanted to ask her not only about social media, but also TikTok. And here's our interview. So what kind of impact is TikTok having on our children?
Well, it's definitely having a big impact because they are huge users of TikTok. I think the impacts are both positive and negative, like a lot of things. One thing that's really positive is that kids are using TikTok to connect with each other and even sometimes to connect with their parents. So sharing videos that they make is a really nice way for kids to engage with other people. Some of the problems with TikTok, I think, have to do with less the way that kids are using it and more the way that marketers are using it to sort of target kids and use their vulnerabilities to make them more engaged with what I would call sort of toxic or destructive content. So some of the patterns that we've seen in the news that have to do with targeting kids who are looking up issues about body image or dieting and then continuing to target them with information, including some really problematic TikTokers who will promote, let's say, eating disordered behavior and kind of encourage kids to engage in more of that. The biggest issue that I find with kids is both the glamorization of everyone's life on social media, the sort of perfect image, because this generation of kids is already more perfectionistic and has higher standards than previous generations. And so looking at curated images and lifestyles can make you feel pretty bad. There's a lot of FOMO that goes on, fear of missing out when you see other people having these really fancy lives on social media. And then, of course, related to that, social comparison, right? So teens are all about social comparison as they form their own identities and assess who they are. And I call social media a social comparison accelerator. I don't think I coined that term, but it really does, because you're constantly comparing yourself and you don't get a break when you go home from school because you're looking at the same kids on social media.
Psychologist, what advice should parents have? They say take breaks. The kids should take breaks with their phones for homework and mealtime. You know, leave their phones up in their room or set them on the kitchen counter. Have an open line of communication with your son or daughter. Talk about TikTok. Hey, what videos are you watching? What do you think of that video? Can I see that video? That sort of thing. Or make sure, if you don't have a current open line of communication with your son or daughter, which can sometimes happen with teenagers, have a responsible adult. Maybe it's a relative, or maybe it's a teacher, a school counselor, to talk to your child about that kind of thing. And then in terms of looking for symptoms of when a child may be struggling with mental health, the clinical psychologist was saying, where we may as adults recognize, okay, that we're feeling depressed or a little blue, kids really are irritable. That, you know, and moodiness kind of sometimes comes with being a young person,
Sure.
being a teenager, but looking for signs of moodiness or irritability, and then look for giant swings in terms of eating. They don't eat at all, or they eat too much, or they sleep all day, or can't sleep at night. Those are some of the warning signs. So I'd be interested in ladies, your feeling on, you know, what kind of impact young people are having as it results from social media, TikTok.
Yeah, well,
others.
because I'm the expert parent here, I do want to highlight what you said, though, in terms of making sure you talk to your child. I feel like, you know, a lot of times we're looking for these fancy answers that are, you know, rocket science, and it's like, no, talking to your children,
Right.
and as they get older, doing less talking and more listening, more guiding. I think that is definitely not to be underestimated in
Right.
what you just shared.
Yeah. Got
Yeah.
any thoughts along those lines?
I would agree, and you know, as now a parent of older children, the listening really does come into play. And just, you know, as a parent, I can think back to a couple of times where we probably overreacted, and that may have not been the best. So maybe thinking, okay, we've got this issue. How do we address it in a way that you get the right response you want?
Yeah.
You know, from the family member that you're trying to engage with. So it's not an attack and then they back off or shut down. But, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. How did you all handle social media? I think we have talked about this before, but you can give me a refresher because you know I want children.
It was, it was just coming up really as my kids. TikTok is
new.
New. So my kids were in college and I can't do anything about that now.
Right.
I think the biggest issue, and I think I've talked about it before, was with Luke and gaming and online gaming and making sure he wasn't playing with somebody online that he didn't know who that person was.
Right.
And that person could pretend to be, you know, a 14-year-old and you have no idea who that person is. So making sure that if you are online gaming or online interacting, that you really do know who you're talking to. That was our biggest issue.
I am growing concerned about this next generation when you hear record high levels of violence, sadness, and suicide risk among teen girls. I'm just worried about this next generation. If we're finding that we're seeing high levels of these things, what is causing that? And then how do we fix that? I just don't know.
Yeah, and it's the phone, and it's the instant, okay, like when I was in high school, if I didn't get invited to a party, I didn't find out until Monday or Tuesday the next week.
Right.
Whereas if you've got a kid sit at home on a Friday night and they see all of their friends at a party, and they're like, oh, I wasn't invited to that. And it's hurtful.
It's that fear of missing out, that FOMO thing.
Yeah,
we hear so much
and
I
then
want to
being
add
hurt
something.
that you weren't included.
Yeah, that's never a good feeling. I want to add something to this experts list, expert to expert. I think that the parents that I know, they have these social media accounts too.
Sure.
Yes.
And they're following their kids and monitoring their kids, and they're in their children's phone.
Right.
And so, you know, while I can appreciate privacy, I also feel like your kids you can't afford to have privacy, and maybe there's levels to it. You know, maybe it's not a hard black and white kind of line.
Well,
and I'm sure you guys can speak on this better than I can, but I feel like we can't afford for privacy. You have to know what's going on in your household.
And you do, but there are things called private accounts or a secondary account where they don't invite you in or you don't have any idea what's going on. Or I think I'm not on Snapchat and I'm not on TikTok, but there are things called private stories. Where
you're right.
My kids will say, oh, I saw it on their private story. And I'm thinking, well, what in the heck is a private story?
Kids can outsmart their parents. I have a feeling with this technology.
And so there are private stories. There are other ways to hide, you know, from your parents.
Anyway, interesting discussion. Let me go ahead and say hello to a few folks. Let's see, Glenn joining us tonight. Fulton's back with us. It's good to have Ralph back with us tonight. Rosemary, Teresa, Kelly is with us. Good to have all of you with us here on this Friday night. So the weekend looks like, what's the pick of the week?
I would say Sunday's the pick of the week just because it's going to be warmer, but we're going to have some sunshine, 40s tomorrow. Just a little breezy tomorrow, little breezy on Sunday, but 40s tomorrow, 50s the end of the weekend.
Yeah. And what did you recommend for my boys? Hot tea and lemon?
Hot tea and Jet's Pizza.
Jet's Pizza.
That's exciting.
Inside joke.
Little inside baseball there.
Okay. And do you have any recommendations for the throat?
Stop talking.
Stop talking.
There's that.
Be quiet,
We will be
Scott.
able to do that tonight at 11:35 when the news is over, but we hope to see you in 45 minutes over on Channel 13. Have a great night.